Oh, hello, and welcome to What Are We Talking About with Jamie Jakes. I am him, and we're going to give an instant reaction to the Tom Brady roast on Netflix. And it was titled as the greatest roast of all time, and honestly, I think it might have lived up to it. A, it being on Netflix, being live on Netflix, and being uncensored gave it a way different feel, made it feel like an actual roast in an actual comedy club, which I think is the real reason why I think doing a video like this is good, because basically what our channel is comedians, stand-up comedians doing football content. And that's what we saw here with some comedians did really good, some comedians did not so good. The host of the evening, Jeff Ross, got very, very tired early on and kind of stopped talking, but he was amazing when he did have the mic in his hand. And Kevin Hart is an absolute savage. Everyone makes fun of him for accepting everything, but he gets offered everything. And how could you say no to the Tom Brady roast? I thought Kevin and Jeff absolutely murdered it as hosts. Drew Bledsoe opening the show with a massive F-bomb was both hilarious and set the tone for the whole evening. When they walked out and there was a big panel of people, I was like, wait, are those comedians going up too? Or is it just going to be the football players and the comedian just like wrote those jokes for them? That's why they're putting them on stage. Like, nope. They have all of these comedians going up as well. Starting with, I guess we'll start with Nikki. Glaser got the first standing ovation of the night. I've always been a big fan of hers. She absolutely destroyed. I did feel very bad for Randy Moss having to follow Nikki as well as she did. Really kind of got the show rolling early on there. Randy had no shot, and he made the best of the situation, but he's obviously not a stand-up comedian. They did kind of break the fourth wall and kind of talk about how they did have a prompter, they did have writers. Obviously, it was obvious that a lot of those football players had writers, and I think Gronk alluded to it at one point. Like, oh, I made that joke up like it was a good joke. And my first thought was, of course you wrote that joke, Gronk. Like, obviously, it was very Gronkowski. It wasn't a very tight written joke. It was dumb. Just like Gronk, he did have a little bit of a struggle with the teleprompter there for a little bit. I think Andrew Schulz said the word was 3/5 or something like that. He was trying to work his way through. He set up the shot thing that they were going to do and then totally lost place of where he was. And then Kevin Hart came back on. He's like, I think it's pretty obvious that Gronk is on a lot of coke too, which I thought was pretty funny for him to bring up. Gronk did the glass smash. That was, I'm sure, problematic and probably dangerous for the people in the front row. There were some people that were very, very close to the stage that Gronk smashed the glass near their eyeballs, like literally eyeball level. So maybe got away with one there. Sam J, no idea where she came from. Never seen her perform ever before. But Sam, first of all, describing as a lesbian what it would be like to have sex with Tom Brady, just to give it one more go round. For some reason, like jokes like that almost never hit. Like just telling an imaginary situation of a story. You saw a lot of the other football players like Gronk try to do something like that to lesser effect, but just the way she set up how medical and procedural having sex with Tom Brady would be with her was just absolutely hilarious. I thought it was super funny, and I thought she absolutely murdered. And she went in deep on Bert Kreischer after he kind of bombed. He did kind of have the bomb of the night, at least for the comedians group. Obviously seemed the least prepared. Obviously seemed like he had trouble reading the prompter. And Tom and Bert's sketch, or whatever you wanted to call it, had the most help because it had multimedia situations going on in the back. The highlight of their whole thing was Tom reacting to Tom Brady's picture and doing like the shirtless, like weird pregnancy photo. But yeah, him and Bert seemed like Tom was really being held back by Bert the whole time. And Bert didn't really add anything to the situation other than chopping and cutting into Tom's punchlines. So that was very disappointing, but not surprising. Bert's a really bad actor, and there's a real reason I think that movie kind of failed The Machine. It kind of felt like if Tom was acting as Bert in that movie for him, maybe it would have done better. I don't know. Doesn't seem to be Bert Kreischer's strong suit, and his struggles in comedy, his spiral in comedy that's been going on behind the scenes seems to have continued tonight. So that's cool. Good for you. And Ron Burgundy's music, brilliant that he comes out in character as Ron Burgundy, holds the character the whole time. The dink dunk joke was absolutely hilarious. And he was the first to point out that Eli Manning owns Tom Brady and had the crowd kind of had the disjointed, weird, long sentence that he prompted them with. That was fabulous. Ron Burgundy, 10 out of 10 out of his set. Bill Belichick coming out to the non-licensed version of the Imperial March, the Star Wars, the Darth Vader theme song, basically, kind of embracing the heel. He looks super comfortable in front of that big audience, more so when he's like just talking into a camera. He is so comfortable in front of a crowd. And what I think it is everyone says the hardest crowd to perform in front of as like a performer or like a comedian or whatever is a football room. It's just like a tough room to perform in front of for whatever reason. Like a lot of football players will say it. And man, I think that has prepared him, Bill Belichick, for this exact situation. He absolutely murdered it. Looked super comfortable, was riffing in and out, kind of got in and out of the teleprompter a couple of times. I thought he did a hell of a job opening up with the Apple TV roast reference, which was, I mean, you kind of forget about that at the end of the show when they do the shot together. Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick do the shot together, kind of shake hands. And Kraft says, he's the best coach of all time. He's like, well, he just made a documentary about how he sucks. So it's a weird mixed message, but I guess it was cool to see. Maybe they can put a few things behind them. But yeah, man, Bill Belichick just absolutely murdered. Looks just so natural. Looks so natural. And it made me kind of think like, hey, I don't even like really want to see Tom coaching in the NFL anymore. I just want to see him like doing stuff like this, hanging out with Peyton and Eli, hanging out with Pat McAfee. So we on like the common folk can get into like who is the actual Bill Belichick. So either way, he's back in the NFL. It's probably good for the NFL. But if he's not going back in the NFL, I'm kind of selfishly hoping for myself that he just becomes in love with the media game at the older age. Doesn't have to go around and around the rigmarole of an NFL season. He can just kick it and still love the game from afar, and spread his love for the game through other forms of media. I think would be absolutely spectacular for him. Bill Belichick did get the second standing ovation of the evening after Nikki. Julian Edelman absolutely murdered. Looked so, I think it's like a podcasting thing. Obviously, there's a lot of podcasting and a lot of content in front of cameras, maybe not in front of big audiences. Sometimes it doesn't translate. Definitely did for him. Great speaker, very handsome. I feel like he doesn't get, everyone's talking about how handsome Tom Brady is. I think Julian, very, very handsome himself. The joke about how everyone asks how big Gronk's penis is because he showered with him, and then turning that into an Aaron Hernandez hanging himself joke was one of the best Aaron Hernandez jokes of the night, coming up on Tony Hinchcliffe we'll talk about in a second, but talking about how sweet Tom's cum is, and that was his closing joke because he has pineapples or whatever in his smoothies. That was absolutely hilarious. One of the funniest jokes of the evening. Tony Hinchcliffe from the audience. I saw him there early on sitting next to Dana and Sugar Sean, and I think it was Israel Adesanya. Don't get mad at me. It wasn't him. It was somebody else. Anyways, they weren't important. Who really was important was Dana White getting up, doing, like 2 minutes, shouting out liberal pussies all over the world was a pretty bold take. And it went over pretty well from, or as well as you would expect. About 45% of that audience, I think, enjoyed that joke. The rest of them didn't. But man, oh man, Tony Hinchcliffe, I think, really stole the night. And I think the reason he stole the night was how prepared he was, juxtaposed to Bert Kreischer, who probably didn't read the script beforehand, probably was drunk, probably forgot his glasses, couldn't read the prompter, whatever happened to him. Tony Hinchcliffe had that shit memorized. He wasn't looking at the prompter. He had a crazy finishing joke talking about like 3 triple layers of Martin Luther King. It was to Bert Kreischer. Martin Luther, your liver looks like Martin Luther King. Got beat up by, I can't even deliver it right here. And I heard it like 10 minutes ago. That was insane. And the way he kind of walked across the audience, I think just showed a lot of stage presence and a lot of showmanship that no one else's act really had. So Tony, say what you want about some of these guys. Obviously, all these guys on the panel get a lot of hate, including the football players. But man, Tony Hinchcliffe was ultra prepared. His jokes were tight. And I think the only slip up was him kind of plugging his podcast at the beginning with the Dana White bit. I didn't think that really added anything other than like a little bit of a wink and a nod to Kill Tony fans across the world, which there are a lot of. Andrew Schulz, again, I think a comedian who definitely came very prepared. You could definitely see in this specific group of comedians, which is a conversation on the internet at the moment, about how some of them are doing a lot of research and preparing and actually putting an effort into certain things. Andrew Schulz kind of not on the good side of the internet if you really read into like the YouTube trolls or whatever. And for some good reason, but you can't say anything bad about him after that performance. He absolutely crushed it and just seemed super prepared. Every word seemed like it was rehearsed, seemed like he put a lot of time into the writing, into the practice of this show, because they saw how big of an opportunity it was, him and Tony, where it felt like kind of like guys like Bert Kreischer. I don't want to throw Tom Segura under the bus too, because it seemed like he was prepared. He was just kind of held back by Bert. Some of the more seasoned comedians and seasoned actors, Ben Affleck, who definitely had the bomb of the night. They just, were just not as prepared, not as ready. Maybe not their thing, especially if you're Ben Affleck. Didn't really make sense. When they called him out, I was like expecting like a Peyton Manning or something kind of surprising like that at that point of the show. It's like Ben Affleck. I was like, okay, well, let's see what, I didn't think of anything of Sam J before her performance, so let's give Ben Affleck a try. And man, oh man, that it wasn't good. It was like a rant about an internet troll. I don't know. It was really, really weird, and it wasn't a roast of Tom Brady. It's a roast of Tom Brady. You're supposed to make fun of him, buddy. Andrew Schulz is definitely one of the guys who got that. The Andrew Schulz highlight joke of the evening was Bill Belichick has more guys playing for the other team than Diddy. Saying that in front of a couple of the comedians who definitely have ties to Diddy. And I'm sure a lot of people in that room have been at those parties. You could definitely feel a lot of the air get sucked up out of the room through people's buttholes as they clinched when they heard that joke. But I got a big pop out of me. I couldn't really hear the audience's reaction because I was personally laughing so hard. Robert Kraft. So that's a good example of a guy who obviously wrote his own material, but it was well practiced and it was really, really good. And it was short. I think for a non-comedian, probably someone who's, done a lot of speeches, so a lot of corporate events, a lot of stuff like that, you can definitely tell those skills kind of transferred over because he was very calm and he had a little bit of trouble with the prompter. You could tell he was kind of staring at it a little bit too much, but he wrote his own shit. And that's commendable. And I think he did a really, really good job. His joke about Tom Brady buying the Raiders because they did their favorite thing in the world to do, get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, was a hilarious joke and something everyone else missed. None of the other comedians, like there were several topics like Giselle that were covered multiple times by multiple comedians. No one really got into that Raiders tie-in with Jimmy Garoppolo. He shouted out Putin at the end of his speech, which was pretty hilarious. I kind of forgot about that story. Like Putin stole one of his rings or whatever. And he does a shot with Bill Belichick at the end, which was awkward, but cool. You could definitely tell that Bill wasn't super excited about it either. He was like, yeah, fuck that guy. I think Bill's biggest regret would be not going harder on Robert Kraft than he actually did. I think with the Robert Kraft and the way this whole Netflix thing went, I think it's really potentially going to change the way we view Tom Brady in the long run. As someone who can, take the heat, someone, stuff we already knew about him. But I think what we're really going to get out of this is that he is immortalized, cemented as a patriot, where guys like Peyton Manning, they're like, he's kind of a Colt, but he's a Bronco, right? And it makes more sense in this instance that Tom Brady would be a Patriot because he won all the Super Bowls with the Patriots and then just won at the very end of his career when he went to Tampa. But I think we are going to see Tom Brady in Patriots uniforms in every picture we see from him for the rest of the time. And I think this Netflix special has pretty much everything to do with it. The one massive miss, and you could see it in the look in this poor man's eyes, Shane Gillis was made for this roast. I think guys like Bert Kreischer really stole a spot from Shane, where Shane, I think, would have put a lot of effort into it. Everyone knows Shane loves sports. He loves football. He, I think, would have absolutely murdered if he was given. I almost wanted Tom just be like, I brought in a ringer. Everyone makes some noise for Shane Gillis. And Shane Gillis was going to walk on stage and just absolutely light everybody up on fire on behalf of Tom Brady. I think it would have been an amazing thing, an amazing extension to the run that Shane Gillis is on. Well deserved. Not to say that I wanted any longer show. I couldn't believe none of the cast or anybody needed to pee. Like, I peed like 5-6 times during this show. You could see them drinking, you could see them sipping water, and they sat through 3 hours. That's another crazy thing, where the Comedy Central roasts, like, they would be an hour and a half with commercials, at best. That was 3 hours of just absolute fire. And you can definitely tell the audience energy level was definitely waning towards the end. They were still having a good time. They were still laughing at jokes. But I think Kevin Hart did a really good job of getting them back in it, getting their energy back up, because no matter how good the product is, 3 hours of sitting watching jokes, it drains your energy. It's laughing is not the easiest thing in the world. I already mentioned Ben Affleck bombed, weird speech, and then Peyton Manning coming out at the end. My only thought is, why wasn't he? I got Eli wasn't there. That was a part of the joke, but why wasn't Eli there? I think we've all seen him be just as funny as his brother in a more subtle way. And yeah, I just think it would have been awesome. Maybe there was a scheduling conflict. I don't know. Peyton Manning did a great job. And then Tom Brady closing it out, doing the 9/11 joke where 2 jets hit Drew Bledsoe. And then the big finale, him finally admitting on camera that he knew about the deflating balls, and it was definitely an attempt to cheat to get the upper hand. So cheers, Tom Brady. That's my thoughts on the show. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you thought someone else bombed, and tell me your favorite joke that I maybe didn't cover on this. Thank you guys for listening. The real bread and butter of this channel, we do a lot of stuff over the summer, but the real bread and butter of this channel is comedians watching football games. I would highly encourage y'all to go through our shorts, because we are just basically like a live reaction channel. So subscribe for that. Once the season comes around, we'll be doing a lot of live watch parties where it's us kind of drinking beers and watching football, making jokes about it. Thank you all. Please subscribe to the channel. Good night.